And we'll start with the best non-con games. By the way, coming up on today's show, Doug Rohan of Rohan Law on FSU versus the ACC. Mike Walsh, who is with On It, and they do NIL trading cards. Very interested to hear from him. And Max Olson of The Athletic at 4:45. And then Craig's Off the Radar a little bit later, right after that, at around 5 o'clock. And then we've got also, if we have time, we'll talk about the SEC running backs like we did the Big 12 running backs yesterday. So here are the top 10 non-conference games of 2024. Number 1, Texas at Michigan. Number 2, SC at LSU. Notre Dame welcomes Florida State. Miami and Florida should be very interesting because that series comes back around every few years. Clemson at Georgia. Most of these are earlier in the season. I know that FSU and Notre Dame is much later. Alabama at Wisconsin. Tennessee at NC State. That's one they've played a couple times. Notre Dame's got, again, on this list at Texas A&M. That's early in the year. Boise State at Oregon. And Penn State at West Virginia. Last year they played in Happy Valley. So, Craig, which of those are you most intrigued about?
Texas, Michigan.
Yeah.
They
nailed it, right?
I think it's just I'm interested in the TV rating for that one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get totally nerdy in the whole TV network stuff, but I do find some of it interesting. And you know that each week I started to just mention like the top 5 or so highest rated games. And unfortunately that turned into exactly what I predicted it was going to turn into. Did it not? In the whole bragging wars and the whole tribal wars of this conference versus that conference, just talking about TV ratings suddenly turned into like firing arrows the other direction instead of just being a fun exercise. And so I'm going to continue it as a fun exercise and not like a, oh, Big Ten sucks, look at that. But I am fascinated to know the rating for this Michigan-Texas game. Obviously, it loses a little bit of its luster, just the turnover on both teams. Although Texas, I think, suffered far less than what Michigan did. But then again, Texas lost, 100 players to the NFL draft. So they suffered plenty in terms of star power. But I just feel like, and maybe it's just because we're more familiar with them, and also they have their quarterback coming back, so you can kind of start there, and a lot of their O-line, that they just appear to be in a stronger place. But I think that's going to be really, really interesting as far as an early season game goes at the Big House. And like we mentioned, I think those two teams have only played, what was it, the one time was in the Rose Bowl? They have never played home and home. I know that. But they've barely ever played for two programs that are right there, like top 5, top 10, all-time, whatever you want to mention, wins, everything else. They're right there in that tier. So, yeah, that's going to be a really cool just atmosphere, early season college football. But I would have loved to have seen, like, this in a playoff game last year. I think that would have been pretty sweet with all the faces that they had. But, yeah, Michigan's obviously turning over a lot, and so is Texas. So it'll be a little bit different. But this is also interesting because this is a game where you, in years past, maybe go, man, whoever loses this is really behind the 8 ball. Not in the expanded playoff era. Like, it really doesn't mean anything at all unless you lose about 3 more games.
Well, and look, I think the only reason it would mean anything at all as an individual game is if one team blows out the other. Yeah. Like, just really shreds them. Then it'll be like, oh, well.
Yeah, then otherwise it's just like, oh, it was a close game. It was in week,
Well, and particularly for Michigan, Michigan's schedule is harder this year than it was last year, obviously, because Texas is on it. But particularly for Michigan, if they get blown out at home by Texas, they don't have as many opportunities down the stretch to make it right as where if Texas loses this game, and we saw last year against Alabama, they had opportunities to make it right. Of course, they won out until the playoff, but if Texas loses, they have maybe some more opportunities to make it right down the line in their schedule.
Yeah, but then again, that's kind of where their lackluster schedule sort of potentially comes back to bite them, but not really because, unless they lose again, like another 2-3 games on top of that, it doesn't matter who wins or loses that game, really. I mean, it will as far as seeding goes, but in terms of it being, I guess my point being like this albatross that you lost that early season game, you can't afford to lose anymore. Or if you lose one more, it better be like to Oklahoma in a close game. Like, those days are dead, man. Yeah. Those days are over. And so that's just going to be a weird difference this year compared to, I don't know, the entire time I've watched college football in my life. So, that's definitely a different element to some of these bigger games this year. But, yeah, I mean, Texas has good teams on their schedule. It's just not like, I mean, they've got an opportunity, though, to beat an Oklahoma, a Georgia. And then beyond that, I mean, in terms of teams we know are going to be good, it's kind of few and far between because we don't know about Florida. Kentucky should be good, but like to what extent are they going to be good?
Who's A&M?
Who's A&M at the end of the year? I mean, they could be like who the hell knows where they are at the end of the year. So, yeah, they don't have as many big-time opponents, even with that SEC schedule, to bounce back. Although you beat Georgia, you beat Oklahoma, and you're going to be feeling really good about things. And so, yeah, that game just I think is going to be great. And, the only time they've ever played was that Rose Bowl when, Vince played the hero, and then they went on to win the national championship against USC the next year. So that was a very relevant game, and it can be hard to top that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Garrett, what are your feelings on SC versus LSU? This is of these games, like I can tell you, like my confidence level in each team on this list, except for these two, because both new quarterbacks, lots of guys kind of in and out. LSU lost a ton of offensive talent. I think they'll be better on defense. They should be smarter with Harold Perkins. USC could be really good. Lincoln Riley's, never had a team that's been god awful. They're coming off a weird year, and Caleb Williams is gone, and so that's the one I have the least amount of idea about.
Yeah, that's what, like, looking at it, I can understand it making this list, but number 2 makes no sense to me because neither one of these teams, like, there was so much turnover for LSU. You had so much going into the draft. You're breaking in a new quarterback. You have a new defensive coordinator. With USC, like, we have no idea what Lincoln Riley is going to look like without a proven quarterback who's already of the caliber of a Heisman candidate. And, like, defensively, what is USC going to look like? Like, it can't get no worse than what it has been. I don't really know what to make of this game. I understand why it's being pumped up because of the brand power with it. But if you actually dive into the details, man, like, I don't think this is going to be that great of a game ultimately.
I would maybe put Georgia and Clemson to me as my number 2. I think
West Virginia, Penn State would be a better game at 2 than over that one. Personally, that's just me.
Yeah, I think I think Garrett's got very valid points. I'm just trying to think in my head like how I would rearrange them if I was going to attempt to do that. Which I'm the type of dude that I have to have like pen and paper to visualize things. But yeah, no, I definitely see where that's just the logos, and you're going, oh, that's Southern Cal and LSU. But there are a lot of questions. Like we haven't seen Lincoln Riley. I guess we did at the end of the year, the bowl game. No Caleb Williams, but Caleb's been his guy for 3 seasons now, and it's a different era there at SC, different defensive coordinator, as Garrett mentioned, and then LSU loses a ton of firepower. Yeah. Jaden Daniels, all those great receivers. So, yeah, that'll be interesting just for, like, who is either one of these teams early on in the year. But, yeah, I could see not having that as, like, the must-watch number 2 conference game or non-conference game. I think Texas-Michigan's number 1 very clearly as far as a must-watch goes. But you can make the case for a lot of these others to – I mean, Penn State, West Virginia, I'm glad you mentioned them because that's definitely not going to be mentioned in the top 5 for probably most people. But I think in terms of just like good old-fashioned just college football rivalry and hatred and wanting – you know what I mean? Like, I just think that's going to be a great game from that standpoint, and especially in Morgantown. West Virginia's got some confidence after last year. It's early enough to where your season hasn't been spoiled, and so you still believe you have, like, you're pretty good when that time comes. And so, yeah, that one's going to be a lot of fun and potentially a great launching pad for the Mountaineers, although I'm sure Penn State will still be favored when the time rolls around. But, yeah, I like that matchup a lot. Oh, Notre Dame A&M, I feel like they've played 1,000 times in my lifetime. Yeah. But I am very curious about it.
Bowl games against each other.
Yeah, a lot of bowl games. It seems like every other year they played in a bowl game when I was younger. But that one I'm intrigued by just because of Mike Elko and the new era in College Station. I'm very interested in that. And then Notre Dame's obviously expected to be pretty good. So, yeah, I would have that one a little bit higher, just my own personal taste.
Look, Florida State at Notre Dame is Riley Leonard's chance to make right a game that – if he was healthy,
they would have won.
Yeah, probably.
Could have beat them.
Yeah, probably. I mean, he doesn't get hurt. That doesn't get derailed.
And that's what the committee took into account when they decided that Florida State should be in the College World Playoff.
Yeah, but and that was
undefeated.
Yeah, unconquered.
Yeah, unconquered.
But yeah, I'm very intrigued. Like, we'll see how DJ Uiagalelei adjusts to the offense at Florida State, but it's in the middle. This is in November, so that's a huge one for both those schools down the stretch.
Yeah, just hope they're both like all those guys are playing at that point in time in November. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Riley Leonard's going to have another shot. And if I'm Mike Norvell, I'm like, of all the places you could have gone, like, could you have gone somewhere else that we don't play next year?
Right. Yeah.
Just because he was trying to go out there on not one leg, like half a leg. He was like, no, I can go back in. And they had to send that. I remember watching it, and I remember having so much admiration for his guts. But they had to literally send the doctor over there and go, Riley, we cannot put you in the game.
Yeah.
You're like, no, I'm fine. I know you think you're fine. I'm telling you, you're not. Just trust my medical knowledge. And yeah, that was as gutsy as something as I've ever seen. I do think Clemson and Georgia is going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
This is a very key moment for Cade Klubnik.
Dude, if Georgia wins that game by like 30, I mean, you talk about the Dabo stuff, way that it's already bubbling. I mean, that would go to straight boil. I mean, I guess that's the same thing, right? If it's already bubbling, but it's kind of percolating. The bubbles are starting to come to the surface, but it would be like turn it to a 9.
Yeah, like you have the nice little like
simmer.
Light boil, that's like little bubbles. It would be like full on.
Crank it up, and throw some ramen in there once it gets going. That one's very intriguing too. Georgia Clemson, because where is Clemson in the big picture against a team like Georgia compared to the confidence levels you would have had pre-NIL in this matchup?
Yeah.
Like you'd probably, Clemson can roll in and win this game, and now there's just so many doubts about them. So, man, what win would that be for
Dabo?
Jesus,
if he pulls it off, I mean, it would be huge because he can go like, see? And look, Seth Emerson wrote a great column today in The Athletic about how Kirby Smart and Dabo Sweeney's portal processes aren't really all that different. The only difference between the two, the two of them, is that Kirby Smart isn't completely opposed to it. He's like, all right. And look, they won their first national championship without taking somebody in the portal, but that was more like that was early on, and they were already loaded for bear and ready to go. But then after that, they've taken plenty. So they won their second one with several portal guys.
Yes. So. Yeah. No. I mean, you're right. So if you were picking like 3 games, let's just do it that way. So you kind of like I guess see what our favorites would be, because I'd say Texas, Michigan, Georgia, Clemson. And then, man, that third one is hard. I'm kind of split between, and we give no love to Tennessee, NC State, although that could be great. Alabama, Wisconsin, there's a lot of just mystery there, especially with the coaching change. I mean, primarily because of the coaching change. And Wisconsin got so much early love last year with Luke Fickell's hiring. That ought to be really fun at Camp Randall. So, I have a hard time, but I think those top 2 are pretty clear for me. Georgia, Clemson, and Texas, Michigan at number 1.
Yeah. All right, let's see.
I'll go Penn State, West Virginia.
Okay. All right.
I would go Michigan, Texas, number 1, Penn State, West Virginia, and then I would go Florida and Miami just for the intrigue.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think you can go wrong. I think whatever your list is, there's no wrong answer. Yeah.
I'm gonna disqualify Florida State and Notre Dame because I would be interested in that. If it wasn't on this list, it wouldn't matter. I mean, it's always going to interest me. But I would say number 1, Texas at Michigan, number 2, Georgia or Clemson at Georgia, and number 3, I'm with Miami and Florida early on in the year because that's going to be a huge test for. Look, and we know that Florida is not going to be picked to win that game even at home. I don't think, given that, but it's going to be a really narrow spread. If Miami is really as good as they think they're going to be, this should be a game where they can go maybe make a statement in a very tough place to play. No matter how bad Florida's been, the Swamp is not an easy place to go into and win. So if they can go into the Swamp and win, that's gonna show a lot of things about the potential this Miami team could have with Cam Ward and Damian Martinez and Colby Young and all the guys that they have that they picked up in the portal and brought back, and Tyler Barron now to go on that defense. So
I'll tell you what too, if Miami loses that opening game, that's already going to start to make things feel really weird. And then they got South Florida the later in the month, and USS can be probably pretty good. I think they're a team that's been mentioned quite a bit as being a little bit of a sleeper. So Miami's got to be mindful of that first month of the season.
And here's the other thing about Florida. Okay, they have Miami has USF. Florida has UCF. And that will be the most important game that UCF has ever played.
You think so?
Yes, because of what they're trying to prove to the world and what, to their fans at least, what those three schools mean.
Right.
Like what it means to be in the group with those schools. It'll be a big deal. Their fans will be roaring, ready to go for it.
I ask why, just because they beat them a couple years ago.
Yeah,
they beat them in that bowl game
but this
2 years
one,
ago.
Yeah, but this one is in the regular season.
Right.
Like UCF has loaded up its roster.
They're
maybe
in the Big 12 now.
They're in the Big 12. Like this is a power versus power thing. So
yeah,
I think
I'm trying to think. I don't know UCF well enough to know like this is the biggest whatever without like questioning myself a little bit. So because I know they've had to have, like I know that bowl game versus Miami or versus Florida was a big deal. It was a Gasparilla Bowl, I think is what that was.
Yeah.
Because I remember seeing the meme. Remember that girl who wore her UCF shirt on the work meeting with the Florida guy?
Yeah.
They had like the backdrop was the score.
Yeah.
I don't know. For some reason, I recall that, and it was funny at the time that she was bragging like that on a work call. I think it was during COVID. That's why everybody was on Zoom.
Hey, MC Gusto, UCF fan, says, indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed, Paul. So, it's big. It's big for them. Here's the thing. The bowl game now, especially in the modern parlance of bowl games, the Gators have an excuse. Like, it was the bowl game.
Oh, we were in the bowl game.
It was the bowl game. It was, it was end of the bad season. Guys opted out, blah, blah, blah.
Florida State was like, we missed out on the playoff, and our guys wanted to play.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Different situation. One was egregious, one was just happened. But you have that built-in excuse, and but there's no built-in excuse. It's the regular season. It's it's a game that everybody's going to care about and watch in the state of Florida.
Yeah, no, that'll be big for sure, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of eyes on that. Yeah, because it's either way that goes, whoever's on the losing end of that will be feeling pretty down pretty quickly right out of the gates. So yeah, that's a big must needed win I think for both Cristobal and Napier. But yeah, I'm looking forward to all these. Boise, Oregon's getting no love really, but. It is what on a list. Somebody's got to be at the bottom of the interest level.
Hey, Malachi Nelson versus Dylan Gabriel. So.
Yeah, no, I'll be interested in that game. I wouldn't have it top three necessarily. And that third spot, really, I could go. Like you could ask me tomorrow, and I'd change my pick to Florida State, Notre Dame, or something. But I think those top two are pretty clear in terms of just ramifications and just kind of history, particularly with the Texas and Michigan game, just because we've never seen that outside of the Rose Bowl a few years back. But, yeah, looking forward to it, excited about it, and wish we could fast forward a couple of months to start this all revving up.
Yeah, absolutely.